Welcome back into the film room, guys. We have a special show tonight, obviously a Saturday night edition, and we have a couple of guests tonight. Obviously, the mainstay, Mr. Anthony Prohaska from Disguise Coverage. And welcome back to the show. Welcome back into the film room. And our newest contributor to Cover One, Kendall Mursky. Kendall, what's going on, brother? And welcome to the show.
Nothing much. Happy to be here. Happy to be a part of Cover One, the group that got me through going to Massachusetts schools and being in Patriots land. It's nice to be able to contribute to this team and hop into the film. I mean, dude, draft season, it's the best season. It's the season, a 24-year-old Bills fan has just gotten used to living in. So yeah, I'm ready for it.
No, we're happy to have you, especially Anthony and I, because we love having film junkies on the staff. So to add another one like yourself to break down some film with us, like you're going to do tonight, man, we're excited to have you. And Kendall will be jumping around from different shows this off season. Again, the draft niche is his thing. Film is his thing. So he's a go-to guy. Make sure to follow him. You can see his name down there on the screen. Anthony, man, it was a great week of Senior Bowl footage. Great game today. So let me get your thoughts from the top about the Senior Bowl.
I think to start with, like, the whole week, I think this Senior Bowl was, I don't want to say more important than others, but there are several players this week that were at the Senior Bowl that operate in positions of need for the Buffalo Bills. So I think this was a Senior Bowl more so than in recent memory where, especially with we know how Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott like to grab guys from the Senior Bowl. There were so many guys that were top players at positions of need for the Buffalo Bills, combined with scheme fit and the odds of the Bills taking one of those players. So it was nice to have specific areas to watch and keep an eye out for. And then even if you weren't looking at it from a Bills perspective, so many guys had a lot of great weeks in the Senior Bowl, and being able to break that tape down every day. And then, we were talking about it in our three-way chat earlier. It's so much different, right, when you're competing in these drills that aren't necessarily game reflective, like the one-on-one wide receiver DB drills where the wide receiver just has literally the entire field and can do whatever they want because it's just one-on-one. Like, those aren't realistic. So you come into the game then and it's like, okay, do those players who had a good week, do they transition that to the actual game? And Phidarian Winfrey from Oklahoma had a great week, and he crushed it today at the Senior Bowl. Boye Mafe, I think his week wasn't as strong as Winfrey's, but then I would say his game, even though I think Winfrey was a Senior Bowl MVP, I thought Mafe was even more of a game wrecker off the edge. He showed technique. He showed fluidity coming off. Those were two huge standouts for me. And then, someone who we're going to talk about later, my boy Roger McCreary looked good in coverage, but I mean, that was expected. But there were some players who had some really good games today, flashed really well. And it's nice to see those guys who had good games, who also had a strong week. It's nice to know they can do it in a game atmosphere, and it bodes well for their draft stock as we move forward.
Kendall, what about you, man? Who are some guys maybe that stood out during the week or even in the game today?
Someone who stood out during the week for me was Cole Strange. Chattanooga, I think he played guard for them, but he was playing center all week.
Yeah.
And he was dealing with our guy, Travis Jones, just a wrecking ball on the interior defensive line. Someone we're probably going to talk about on the show today. But yeah, Cole Strange had a tough 1v1s against him, but a lot of times he would, lose the first rep and then kind of figure out how to counter on the second rep. I'm pretty sure like Charles Davis and those guys and DJ were talking about it on the
they also shouted him out because he's got that old school. He's got the single bar down his face.
Exactly. There's something about that, and it just kind of shows some competitive toughness.
He wears no gloves. Mentality. It looks just super cool.
But yeah, no, he's not even like a huge guy or anything, but like he can actually anchor quite a bit. So that was interesting. And then wide receiver, we definitely didn't really do a whole lot of work on wide receivers, but it's kind of easy for them to pop out.
Yeah.
And I thought Velus Jones from Tennessee had a really solid week of practice. And he
came on too, like later in the week. He started coming on little by little. Sometimes like you hear guys mention it, they even mentioned on the broadcast, maybe it takes a player 2 or 3 days to really get settled in, get into the routine. Because you got to remember, these players are all about routines. And you're just throwing all these all-star type players into that environment. They're getting poked and prodded every day, pretty much interviewed from top to bottom. And, to see a guy like that, incrementally get better throughout the week, I thought that's definitely a good one. That guy that stood out.
Yeah,
will add, Travis Jones, that one's just an easy one, right? But it translated. You saw him during the week. the thing that I liked about the one-on-one drills is when you're talking like pass rush one-on-ones is that like on film, like we don't have any all 22 footage. Some coaches film on UConn. So
yeah,
the different cut-ups we saw were on like social media of like coaches film from the end zone angles. And a lot of the times you saw him in that zero technique, really not doing much except trying to push the middle of the pocket, which he does, and he does well. But the one-on-one drills for a guy like that really made him some money because then it got to show that he could actually rush the passer when he wanted to, and not just with power. And then kind of like what Kendall talked about, maybe he lost on that first rep and really didn't get past the offensive lineman, but then on the second rep, he used a different move and got to it. So it showed, in those one-on-one drills. And that's what those drills are for, like to showcase a different side of a player. A nose tackle who really doesn't rush the passer is really just, supposed to push the pocket, maybe occupy two, so that the guys on the edges can, rush the passer. I think that was one of those things. Travis Jones obviously was a guy that stood out. I think another guy that really popped was obviously I liked McCreary. His feet, I mean, they're just sticky, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit, so I don't want to burn up too much content on that.
Talk about him. Just do the whole episode on McCreary. I love him.
Christian Watson, the wide receiver. I mean, that guy, he's obviously someone that stood out a lot on one-on-ones. And like when you watch him in his releases, and you're going to see film over the next few weeks of this guy, watch his releases and watch the ankle flexion. You see when he makes these cuts, on 90 degrees, you see the ankle flexion on him. He does that duck walk that you see a lot of those wide receivers, coaches teach. He's got some really nice flexibility, and you see it in a lot of his moves during those first and second phases of the release phase. So another guy that stood out. But with that said, let's jump into some of the content we are going to break down today. So we picked 3 different positions among each other to really address like the types of needs that the Bills have going into this draft. And I know it's early, it's prior to free agency, but as of right now, there are 3 different areas where we think the Bills need to address, and maybe even address them a lot earlier than we're comfortable doing. So we're going to start with the interior offensive line. And Kendall, he did a bunch of scouting on some of the interior offensive linemen, specifically at guard that we're going to talk about. Then we're going to shift to cornerback because, the last few years we've talked about, we've as Bills fans wanted to see them draft a corner with some athletic traits. We love the physicality. We love the tacklers. We love the guys that play it off coverage, but we would like to see a boundary or a field corner that has some athleticism, someone that you can pair across from Trey White and maybe put him in press if you need to. And I know Levi Wallace, for the most part, from top to bottom, he's been serviceable in that area, but we would like to see a little more, fluidity in that area when it comes to athleticism at corner.
Yes.
And then, right. And again, we're going to get to all that. And that's really the point behind that. And then finally, we're going to finish up with some hog mollies. I did the interior defensive line with some defensive tackles, one on that I just mentioned from the top. So let's start off with the guards. Kendall, I bring it to you, man. What did you see from the interior offensive line? And more importantly, let's start at the top. Like what in your opinion, what do the Bills need at interior offensive line, and what do they have right now on the roster?
So, I mean, right now you kind of have to start it with how did you feel as the season ended? Because obviously the interior line got better. It got better from what it was, just strictly zone blocking and then kind of shifting into, we're going to do some gap stuff and show some versatility in our scheme, things like that. And then obviously Rick Bates being plugged into the lineup, that was a big part of that. But are you content with Bates being the plug and play left guard next year? And I think that's the start and end of a lot of the evaluation for what you want to do in terms of addressing this need in the offseason. And to me, I think Bates is absolutely an option, but I don't want to go into the season relying on him to be the starter, because I think he can be and he's capable of doing that, but I don't want to rely on it, especially with the step back that Darrell Williams took this year, had to get reduced down into guard and look good at times, but also look shaky at times. So I think we need to find one there in the draft. Not necessarily saying it has to be first round, but I think investment in the first 4 rounds, we can't wait till the 7th round and drafting Jack Anderson again and then having him poach off our practice squad kind of thing. Like, what's the point of even doing that? Let's, get some investment to the point where they can at least be depth and they can challenge Bates for that starting spot. So
Erik, man, hey, we appreciate that donation there.
Big time, man.
He's
Thank
an
you so
OG.
much.
He's been with us for many years. Always
Hog
supporting us at
mollies.
Cover One. I mean, we had a meeting a couple of years ago, and usually we do it every summer downtown. Usually pick a spot and have drinks and have everyone come down. All the Buffalo creators. Erik was down there with us buying us shots. I was stumbling out of the bar after hanging out with 2 hours with that guy. So no, Erik, appreciate the support there. So Anthony, and I'm going to interrupt Kendall there.
yeah,
Anthony,
no
how do you feel about Bates next year? Like, do you think he is a guy that Bills fans should really kind of latch onto, and the Bills, have to bring him back technically?
I'm okay if the Bills run that offensive line back that they ended the year with, just from a two-phase perspective. One, I would love if the Bills' offensive line was like a top 5 offensive line. I would love if there was Quentin Nelson there and Ryan Ramczyk and just all these studs up front. But as long as the Bills' offensive line can just be consistently average, they function completely fine in this offense. And that's really what we saw when Bates went in. It's not like this offensive line became a top 10, top 5 unit. They just all of a sudden had some stability. They were able to hang their hat on the gap scheme when it came to the run, like Kendall mentioned. They were able to have more athleticism and physicality and pass protection. So I'm okay if Bates comes back because Josh Allen can still navigate the pocket. We still know what we have in this offense. I'm okay if Bates comes back. But if Bates comes back, then I expect there to be upgrades in other areas of this team. So if we run back the same 5 on the offensive line, that's fine. But then there needs to be an upgrade at edge or defensive tackle or corner. There needs to be some sort of investment, either monetarily or with draft capital, in another position. That is the reason we ran back the same offensive line. Because as it stands, as much as I like Ryan Bates and what he brought to the offense, I think there is a decent chance you can find somebody, especially if you draft someone in the first, I would say first 2 rounds for sure, but potentially even in the first 4, somebody who can give you his level of production combined with more of a ceiling, combined with a bit more athleticism and or physicality. So I'm okay. I liked what Bates did. We broke him down several times in the film room with a lot of the runs that we saw from the Bills, but I think if you're bringing Bates back, that means you invested. I would assume that means you invested capital in some other form in another position, which would make me even more comfortable. If we all of a sudden brought Bates back, but then we invested at edge and D tackle and corner, I would feel a lot better knowing that we upgraded all these other areas and then came back and brought an average group, but then we got above average and even plus matchups in other areas.
Right, and I'll just wrap that up about Bates. I like this point here from Air Raid. Depth is decimated. Morrison Williams, not long-term, needs some, this, I agree with that. And that's why I bring Bates back. And of course you bring him back and you say, hey, you got to compete for a position. But I also bring him back, not just because of how well he played at the end of the year, but because of that depth element, because he also can play center and he also could be the backup to Mitch Morse. So that's why I bring him back. I, give him a chance to start, but I'm also investing in the interior offensive line, much like we said last year. Of course. So
we're in the same spot last year. We're here talking about edge
similar.
And corner and interior O-line again. Oh, it's
very similar. So Kendall, let me get back to you. All right. So you kind of gave us a rundown on what we're working with, especially inside. What do you believe they are looking for, schematically, maybe from a scouting perspective, what they are looking for in interior offensive line? So when we get to the film, people are like, okay, yeah, that matches. That makes sense.
So I think we're not looking for big maulers, big, like 330-pound dudes that are really just mauling their guys out of zone blocking areas. I think we're really looking for guys that can be scheme versatile and can get out and move in a polling fashion, or they can reach block on zone runs and really, play a couple gaps to their left or their right. Someone that can really move, like a Mitch Morse, maybe a little bit more hefty than a Mitch Morse, but like a Mitch Morse in his versatility and how they can be used. And I think Rick Bates is a really good example of that because he showed the difference. The difference that he is at that position is just a hair more athletic than your Mongo, than your Cody Ford. It's just a little bit more fleet of foot. The ability to be able to pull out, and Devin Singletary doesn't have to wait in the backfield a little bit for that block to develop, that kind of thing, just that touch more of athleticism. I think that's what they're looking for, not like that big mountain of a human that can just move guys out of the way. Like, who's the guy last year? Deontay Brown from Alabama. Like that dude was just massive, but I don't think he fits what the Bills want to do. So that's what I think they're looking for. Someone who's scheme versatile in the run game. And then lastly, just don't be a complete liability in the pass game, because we know that Josh Allen can make people miss if he has to. But we saw also how much that interior pressure bothered him this season. So mitigating that to some extent is huge.
Right. Yeah. You got to have those guys that are athletic enough to pull, so you can kind of keep that scheme diversity, but also guys that are going to be blocking for 3.1 seconds for Josh Allen, whether he's staying in the pocket or getting out of the pocket. Very good points by you. So with that said, let's jump into the interior offensive line film. We brought, 3 players that we're going to, put under the microscope here. Why don't you name those 3 players real quick, Kendall, before we get to the film, and I'll start letting it roll.
Cool. So the first one is Marquis Hayes from Oklahoma. Second one is Lecitus Smith from Virginia Tech, who I believe was actually linked to us by our own Russell Brown.
Yeah,
a little video said the Bills did their homework on him. So that's always nice to hear from the first party. And then last is Zion Johnson from Boston College. I think that's probably the favorite from all of us. I kind of structured it in an order that I think is our least favorite to favorite, but that kind of changed a little bit with how the game played out and the rest of the week played out, because I don't even think Lecitus Smith ended up finishing the week or even playing in the game. So Hayes may have leapfrogged him a little bit. But my thing with Hayes is he's a big dude. Like, he's 6'4", like tall and lanky for a guard position, which is kind of interesting. Graded out pretty well as a pass blocker per PFF. Not so much as well as a run blocker, but still good, still better than most. And you can see strengths and weaknesses there. I mean, he shows that length, that ability to use his arms and make sure that defensive lineman isn't getting onto his chest plate and allowing himself to really anchor and make sure no one's getting by him. He shows that a few times on tape, and even this week a little bit. Those long arms also help in run blocking situations with those reach blocks, stuff like that. Grip strength was shown a little bit. It's probably a reach to say that's a strength, but it should be. It's more in a plus trait than a negative trait for him. But the thing that showed the most during the week of practice was naturally high pad level, being 6'4". It's tough for him to get lower than his guy and really leverage him. And just some lazy footwork, almost relying on that length for his first punch. And if he doesn't land that first punch, he's out of position, and he doesn't have the agility to get back into position. So those are my main concerns with him, but he does have a lot of good stuff on tape.
Anthony, you have any quick thoughts on Hayes, maybe during the week or even today's game?
Yeah, I think it more goes to, I love what Kendall highlighted here. You see someone of that stature at that guard position, and your immediate thought is like, okay, what kind of pad level does he play at? How is he able to leverage blocks? What does he do if he gets guys underneath him? And I thought, as Kendall has mentioned there, his anchoring ability and pass protection, I thought he showed that at times this week. And that's going to be something that's super key for him going forward. Again, you see a guy, and you're going to hear it all the time through draft season for a guard of that size, or you'll even hear it with other players. They'll be like, oh, well, he's really tall for a guard. You might have to kick him out to tackle because he can't get that pad level, yada, yada, so on and so forth. But I don't think he answered all those questions and made everything go away, but he had a solid enough week to the point that it shows you he is capable of operating in that way that you need him to, given his size. And then you combine that with everything that he does from a strength perspective and his ability to use his length and size on the pro side of things instead of it being a con. I think he's an interesting prospect, and I think he had a solid week this week.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things I would add from my notes. I say he needs to stay rooted a little more. He's a little too hoppy. He surrenders the depth of the pocket. So, I think he actually is a little more mobile than a lot of people maybe realize. And I think he's light on his feet. Kind of reminds me of a Trey Turner. Actually, a thicker upper half, taller type guy. But I think he's lighter on his feet than maybe a lot of people are seeing. So I think he needs to stay rooted. A lot of times when he's is going to punch with his outside hand, he's punching off of that outside foot when you really need to be punching off the inside foot to land it properly and shifting your weight naturally inside to out. I think his greatest strength is his processing. He reads slot blitzers on power runs. He's able to clean them up in that Baylor game. It was one of the first plays where a slot blitz was coming off the right side of the formation, and he was pulling, and he just cleaned up the edge rusher off the edge. He has some independent hand usage. I like to see him clean that up. Again, it's really kind of tied to how he's punching and shifting his weight. But active hands, that's always a good thing. Active hands, active feet. Again, I think he does, pull a little bit better than, most people probably like. I personally, I think he does. Let's see, what else do I have in my notes? Head on a swivel. Yeah, same thing, man. His processing, I think, is really what's going to stand out for him. But we're going to get to some of the film here. So let's jump in there and take a look at some. How many clips did you pull? You pulled like 2 or 3 clips.
I think
right?
I have 3 for each and maybe 4 for Zion. I could be wrong on that, but it should be 3 for each.
Zion deserves 1 million clips.
He really does. I could have given him 1 million.
His battles this week, we could have just done a film on him versus Travis Jones, like their one-on-one matchup.
Oh yeah, it was incredible.
It was
awesome.
versus Kong. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
awesome.
I may have slipped a couple of them in there, at the end when we get to Jones to kind of show the matchup. But we'll start with Hayes here. Kendall, I'll let you take it away, brother.
So on this first one, it's funny. This is actually an example of him pulling. So you can see like he can get out there and move. I agree with you. It's definitely something people are knocking him for, and I'm one of them. I personally think it's a minus trait for him, but it's not to a point where he's a liability and he can't like get around his tackle on the opposite side. Like he can get out there and do his job, but I think it's an area he may have to get a little bit more agile with. But you can see on this one, he's pulling in pass protection, and he's kind of stunned like right off the edge right there by number 55. And he doesn't really have great leverage at the point of attack or really great power at the point of attack, but he absorbs it really well and then anchors and keeps him off. That's really the key to this play for me. It's really just how he absorbed that contact at the point of attack, because it really didn't look like he was ready for it, but he absorbed it and he's kept his feet in the ground and got after it.
All right. And here's the next play here. A nice reach block here on the zone run.
Yeah, and the big thing with this one too is kind of that grip strength that I was talking about. It's like it's not his best trait, but he's getting out there. He's making sure his hands are in the right spot. Every block is a hold to an extent, so you got to have some grip strength. And he shows it here, and he's making sure that his feet are also following the block. He's getting out in front of him to at least seal him off a little bit, because if he's not sealing him off and he's trailing on number 58 there, that's a clear hold, and you got to.
Yeah, he keeps those feet moving, right? He keeps his feet moving, and he's able to not get that hold call. And it's a nice run for that running back to get up in there too. Nice work there. That's the thing with him. Like I said, I think he's an athletic guy. I really do. I just think he's a little too jumpy, and you can kind of you see it here at left guard.
Yeah, you see it here. It's very hop.
And like I get it. You put up, you put down. That's what they're kind of taught. But it's the thing. Like as long as he's going with the flow of the play, and that is a hell of a block.
Yeah,
really throwing that linebacker right out of the run fit there. That really springs their running back there, right, Anthony?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's some of the stuff we talked about at the end of the year that the Bills O-line did for Singletary, making it like very easy for him to be decisive in the run game. And this is one of those blocks like Hayes just mauls his man, and this is very easy for the running back. All right, cool. Let me just set this up and then put my foot in the ground and get upfield. And especially as there's still some indecision in terms of what the Bills offensive line or run scheme might look like given whatever or whoever they go with as their offensive line coach. But seeing a big mauler with movement ability who can climb to the second level and make things easy for a running back is somewhat scheme versatile. And so it's really nice to see him just do his job here and just complete. I feel so bad for this linebacker. This is such a bad rep for him. He just gets wrecked.
You know what,
but
Kendall, I like about this play too. You talk about that grip strength. So look at the shoulder pads. Look at him latch on. He helps the backside offensive lineman. But then look, he gets his shoulder pads. You see him kind of tilted, right? You see that right shoulder up a little higher. He's got the right hand on the outside shoulder of the linebacker. And then that inside hand, that left hand, watch it come inside. And then as that he feels that linebacker kind of, scraping down the line of scrimmage, he just torques him right there. Boom. He just torques him.
Nice.
Flips those hips, a little torque right there. And that allows the running back to get up aside there. Kind of what you talked about, that grip strength. And again, using the feet and hands to really displace that linebacker at the second level.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's expected of you as an offensive lineman. When you're engaged with a linebacker, you got to control that block. And for that reason, I feel like I had to put this play in, because not only did he do his job, but he also did more than his job and created a clear alley for his running back. But I really liked how he helped out his tackle there with the like half-hearted combo block at the start, just to make sure that his guy can get there and seal off that
Oh, he
defensive
nailed it
end.
too. He nailed it.
He
Look
did
where
it
he places
perfectly.
it. Boom, smacks that near shoulder,
was
pushes him
perfect.
over to help him reach him. Like that's absolutely good run fitting by the offensive line there. So with that said, let's move on to the next guy. Let's move on to Lecitus. So what do you see on film from him as far as strengths and weaknesses go?
Lecitus Smith is interesting. He's kind of like a shorter, stouter guy. I'm pretty sure he started as a tight end. Not great in terms of grading out, but I thought he played really average football. And for someone who's being projected as a 3rd, 4th round guy, I think that's fine considering, what he graded out as. But you watch this guy and he's just got great body control. Like you can tell that he was a former tight end. Like he knows how to move. He knows where all of his limbs are and he's not moving like out of order. Like he understands how to move. And furthermore, you see that as a puller, he's very patient and shows good footwork as a puller. He doesn't like get outside to the right D gap before he has to and then kind of surrenders the right C gap. He's very patient with it, making sure he doesn't open up clear alleys before they have to be open, and then striking when he has to with strength. And then, like I said, that mobility, that body control, that also kind of leverages itself into second level blocking. He can get to that second level. He's not crazy agile, but he's also not going to get completely juked out by every single linebacker out there. He can make sure he can keep his footwork solid and sound in front of them and make sure he's squared up to get that good aiming point on those guys. But really the biggest weakness I saw to his game was his short arms and his pass pro anchor ability. While he has a really strong lower half and good body control, the fact that he has short arms just means he's going to get squared up a lot by a lot of longer defensive linemen. And if they get the center chest plate on him, it's going to be really hard for him to really anchor down and make sure he's not giving up space. But he proved me wrong a couple times during practice. So that was a nice thing to see him do at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and that arm length thing is actually quite important to some of the archetypes, right, Kendall? When we talk about the guards that the Bills or Brandon Beane has drafted or brought in, or even going back to his Panthers days, right? Because there's an arm length archetype for guards typically, right? Isn't that? I mean, there's something we talked about today.
Yeah, they're looking for, on average in the past like few years, they're looking for right around 33, just above 33-inch arms. I wish I had it pulled up on what his were, but I think they're like 31 and change short. Or like 32, something like that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know it's below average. So it's definitely an area of concern, but if you can work around it and make up for it in other ways, it doesn't matter. You can really mitigate that issue.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Anthony, what were your thoughts on Smith?
I really liked his footwork, and especially like this week, like his footwork and his mobility, both in run action and pass pro sets. I think speaking exactly to what Kendall said there, like his former, his past life as a tight end, you can kind of see it. He's an athletic guy. He can move. He doesn't look uncomfortable when you're asking him to do a variety of things. But it's weird because, again, he does have such a big lower body. This small frame overall in his upper body is what concerns me a bit. His ability to get turned and get overpowered a little bit, whether it's due to, I think, the compact nature of his shoulders and his arms, or it's the short arms in general. That worries me a little bit. But I thought he's another dude who he flashed at times, especially in one-on-ones, a drill that can be tough for those offensive linemen, but he showcased that mobility, and I liked his feet. Doesn't really get crossed up, doesn't get too hoppy, just looks smooth and controlled in whatever he does. And, he's going to get overpowered at times, but that athleticism piece is always there and could be really scheme workable depending on where he goes.
Right, and his arm length, I just looked it up, it's 32 1/8. Measured at the Senior Bowl. I mean, and if you look at some of the archetypes of Bills of the past, I mean, the guy they brought in last year late in the draft, Jack Anderson, had a 31.875 arm length. Brian Winters was 32.75. Let's see who else. Ryan Bates is 32.5. Teller, when they drafted him out of Vodtech, had 34.
The Bills had Wyatt Teller. I've never heard anybody talk about
crazy, right?
Don't do this.
But it kind of comes back. Like when I talk about Lecitus, I think his film last year was better. Russ Brown and Zach Hicks had him in the film room last year. If you guys haven't watched it, go back and look at it. A lot of the film they broke down was against North Carolina. And he's just a nasty player. Like, he's just nasty in all sense of the word. I think he's got some pretty good hip and core flexibility. And yes, his length is a concern. It's something that showed up in my notes as well. And he uses so much power so many times. He just goes to lock on immediately. And, you know, he gets those hands chopped down a bunch. Surrenders his chest too often. It's something that shows up in the run and the pass game. And when he pulls, like, I think he's a good puller, but it looks very methodical to me.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think he's a little methodical when it comes to that, but I do like him pulling. I think that's the type of offense that he will fit the best, you know, getting him on the move. He's very much like Wyatt Teller. You know, Wyatt Teller, when he was coming out of Tech, was a nasty player that had some rough edges. And, you know, you got to also remember, guys, like at the college level, coaching offensive linemen isn't quite the craft that it is at the NFL level. And so a lot of the coaching goes on at the NFL level can make these guys a lot sharper with their craft and their technique. And I think a guy like Lecitus, he told Russell Brown at the Senior Bowl this year that the Bills and Browns were both teams that really took interest in him and that felt like they knew him really well. Because, again, he's been a guy that has really stood out from that perspective. Again, when it comes to scheme and what the Bills you know, like to teach, not just scheme wise, but also that mentality, that physicality, that nastiness. Obviously, they drafted Cody Ford a few years ago. But so with that said, man, let's jump back into the film here on Lecitus, and we'll start with this player right here. Again, he is the left guard, fellas. So right back at you, Kendall.
Yeah, this is literally right back into it, a polling play right as we're finished talking about it. It is kind of deliberate and methodical, like you said. But the reason I like it is kind of for that reason. And obviously it's moldable. You can make it work in different ways. But he takes his time getting out there on this pull front to the left D gap. He takes his time because if he goes too fast and he gets out there too quickly, that linebacker can then just kind of slant inside of him and take away the design run gap. So that's why I like kind of his aiming point and his cadence with it. But furthermore, his strength at the point of attack here. Like he really, like you said, is deliberate and calculated with it. And he just makes sure he fires through that point of attack after the pull. So I really like that place particularly. But this second one, this is just owning your guy. This is really just like, all right, the design run gap is right behind me. I need to make sure I completely own my man and I'm in control of my block. This is kind of showing that lower body strength, that leg churn, sustaining that block, grip strength, all those traits. Like those are all right there out in front of you on this play. So I thought this was an excellent rep, probably one of his best reps in this game.
Yeah, I love this. This is like textbook with Charles Bentley drive catch. So drive foot right here, catch foot right here. So right foot, left foot, drive, catch, drive, catch, drive, catch, creating displacement. I mean, look at the gap that's open there for him. Yeah, so good point on that. Hey, what are your thoughts on this, Anthony?
I love the drive. I love that he latches on and just literally leg power, strength, turns his man, and not only turns him, but drives him out. You see the hand placement. He's got him hooked. He's latched. There's a wide open hole for his man. Like that is a 100% win. That's a great rep, like a dominating rep. And it's a combination of technique and just God-given ability. That's a really good one.
Yeah, Kendall, and this is one that you were kind of talking about, the timing of a play. You know, he widens 56, the defensive tackle initially, but then he knows and kind of senses that there's a little peel back run stunt here. These guys are slanting. This guy's coming over the top, and he processes that, and he's able to pick that up on that timing right there, and then boom. And I know the guy's tackled, but when you're looking at the offensive line, right, Kendall, this is a really nice play from Lecitus.
Yeah, that's why I put it in here, because you got to single out your guy. You can't watch the football here. And Lecitus does everything he has to do on this play. He's making sure 56 gets into his left tackle, and then he combos it up and gets up the field and takes out 12. And there's a clear run gap behind him if his teammate number 60 can take care of his block. This run's going a long way. Like, Lecitus did his job and created a clear alley. It was just the backside of the run was blown up.
Yeah, definitely. You know, that's a really nice play. And like I said, the processing on this is pretty phenomenal, man. Like to read that, you know, yes, like he doesn't get the perfect angle on that guy, but guess what? he gives him the nasty. Like, look at him. He just clubs
Yep.
him down. Hey, you can't even see where the ball is going. If that you're going to get up in here, on this run, well, guess what? You're going to get punished. And that's kind of the mentality that Lecitus brings here. But yeah, that's really good stuff on the Vatech guard here. And let's finish it off with a bang. Zion Johnson, obviously a guy that was probably, I guess I'll ask you guys, was he the best player in Mobile this year?
Oh, not best. Not best overall.
Tough.
Maybe best lineman, offensive lineman.
Who was the best player aside from him then?
Oh, Jermaine Johnson had a great week.
Yeah.
Winfrey
Calvin Austin played really well this week.
Calvin Austin. And if you're combining both, right? Like if we're just talking about practice, I think Jermaine Johnson from Florida State won the week. If we're talking a combination of practice and game, I think Phidarian Winfrey won the week because of what he did in game. But Zion Johnson, especially considering how much, we're talking about him as a guard, but Kendall mentioned it earlier, how much they were giving him center snaps and center reps this week and how well he held his own both in game and in practice. I think he's up there in that conversation.
I think that's why he's there. I think that's why. I think that's why
definitely.
I think he probably had the best week because no one was talking about Zion Johnson playing center. The guy played left tackle prior years. Then he played guard this year. And then they asked him to play center and he was pretty much taking center snaps all week. I think that's where his money is made. And he can play 3 different positions. That's why, right, Kendall, this is why one of the reasons that he's in this film room, that diversity, that positional flexibility in Zion Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. Seeing him able to play center is exactly what you want to see as a Bills front office. Because, you draft someone like, I don't want to say draft someone. You bring someone like Ryan Bates in because of his flexibility. He was literally like the utility offensive lineman for so many years. And now he's kind of found his home with the interior. He can play all 3 spots in the interior. And in a pinch, if he has to, he'll play tackle, right? But with Zion, he's shown this week, he can play all 3 spots there, and he is versatile enough to help out this team as a starter or at depth in all of those positions. But obviously, if we're taking this guy in the first round, we want him to be a starter.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, so what were some of his strengths that stood out in practice all week? He was a standout. There's no doubt about it.
So practice and film from games I watched, his balance and body control, very similar to Lecitus Smith. That lower body is it's finely tuned. Like, it's exactly what you want to see from an offensive lineman. He's always in the right spot with his footwork and stuff like that, but then always with the leg drive and the lower body strength to anchor people, even when he doesn't have proper hand placement, and I'll get to that. But he shows good grip strength, and like I said, that footwork and I want to say short area agility for him specifically in zone run blocking, because he can get out and move and get to his spot in zone run blocking. But then I'll move on here to weaknesses. He's just kind of clunky as a puller. Like, he has some athleticism to fill out as a puller when he gets out in space. He can do it, but it's probably one of those few areas he's truly deficient in. And hand placement. He wins so many reps with terrible hand placement. And that's kind of why he's a good prospect. It's kind of like the Rousseau stuff. It's like, he's just winning on pure athleticism right now. Sure. There's no technique here. Zion has technique, but he's winning without good hand placement on a lot of reps. And it goes to show his lower strength, his lower body strength, and his ability to anchor guys with ease.
Anthony, go ahead. What were your thoughts on Johnson this week?
The first thing, and I'm saying this in all seriousness, is how impressive he looks from like a physical stature, like in shoulder pads and shorts. Like, he's just big, but he's cut. He's muscular. Like, you can tell by looking at him that he's going to be athletic just by the way he stands and the way he looks. Like, he's just impressive. And then you see him actually play, and the athleticism kicks in. You see the movement. I thought in today's game he showed a good job. He did a good job of getting to the second level, especially from the center position. You see that burst and that quickness from him in his steps. And I actually liked, how he performed in drills. We mentioned earlier his battles with Travis Jones. He was giving up some size and some strength to Jones, but his ability to anchor and lock out a little bit in those reps, I thought was a big positive for him this week. There were reps where he lost off the initial first step versus Travis Jones, but then his ability to recover, anchor, and this is while there were, if it's a game, Travis Jones is getting called for illegal hands to the face because there were some reps where Jones just had his hand like literally into the face mask and into the chin and nose of Zion Johnson, and it didn't phase him. He was getting his head wrenched back, but he was locking out. He was anchoring down. So even in defeat, he showed an ability to recover and still gain and even win some ground in these reps. And, to your point, Erik, I think he made a lot of money for himself this week, showing that versatility. And what's awesome, as a Bills team, I think he's the type of guy, right? Because you grab him, you can plug him in at guard, and then whenever Mitch Morse steps aside, you could potentially plug him into center. So his ability to offer that interior O-line versatility at multiple positions and being able to win and provide a plus matchup in multiple ways at those positions, he had a really big week and showed a lot of positives.
Yeah, I agree. He definitely looked the part. And I think that's where it all starts with him. He's got that thick lower body, which is why he would make a really good center. Those thick calves, he's got the badonkadonk on the backside to kind of anchor down when needed. And he needed it a bunch of times against Jones this week. He's got that power in his core, hips, and legs. Once he's latched on, he has the strength to move a defender with his lower body. But he tends to carry his hands low. His hand carriage is a little low. So a lot of times those guys will get up into him. But as Kendall said, he has that frame and that body to really anchor down without having his hands latched on. So I think we saw that a bunch of times this week. But again, he's able to do that. And once he figures out his hands and pass protection and winning early in pass reps, it's going to be a scary, scary thing because he does have heavy hands when he passes stunts. Like he forcefully passes them over to his teammates. But I think when you're talking what scheme he fits best in, it's obviously zone run. That's what BC does. I think he's a great zone run blocker right now. Day one, some of the best feet when it comes to zone run on those first two bucket steps, those first two steps out of his stance, he's money. I mean, if you watch it, it's like textbook. Okay, your foot's supposed to be down the midline. Boom, boom, boom. Like he is on point when it comes to zone run blocking. And I just really, it didn't take long. You watch like one or two games, you're like, okay, this guy's elite when it comes to run blocking on zone runs. So with that said, let's dive into the actual film from Zion. Kendall pulled a couple clips here. So Kendall, take it away.
So on this first one, we're going to see him climb to the second level here. And this is one in particular that I just thought was interesting because it just looks like he's going to lose this on that outside shoulder. I thought it was really interesting on this play, particularly because the play is ran right behind him and he's responsible for the seal out block to create that lane for the running back. And it really looks like number 5 is going to take his outside shoulder with no problem. But this is what speaks to that grip strength. And if he can get that hand placement correct, he has the strength everywhere in his entire body to control every single block. And that's what he does on that play, even when it doesn't look like he's going to get it done. And this is the area that he's probably the most efficient of any area in his game, I guess, outside the hand placement stuff. But this play is really interesting to me because it shows that word clunkiness when I'm saying as a puller. It just looks like he could add a little bit more athleticism when he's out in space on the move. He gets to his target. He gets to the man he needs to block. It just looks like he could have done it a little bit faster because he's kind of forcing his running back to throttle down a little bit on this crack toss. And if his running back doesn't have to throttle down as much, he can really make a play out of this. And ultimately he ends up tripping over Zion.
Right. No, I like your point of that. I would say like he runs with a heavy foot, like lead in his feet, right? He's just a little, he's not super light on his feet, kind of like we saw, like you said about Hayes. He's kind of, I said he's like light on his feet, and you saw him kind of hoppy. Well, you see Zion. This is why he's being considered at center because he's kind of heavy footed here. He still gets the job done. It just takes him a minute when you're talking about range to get out there on the linebacker. But I think that's partly why he is a good fit for those zone run blocking schemes right here, man. This is what we were used to seeing this week, right?
Yeah.
Anchoring down at the line of scrimmage. You always heard Mitch Morse talking about, hey, I like finishing my guy near the line of scrimmage, and Zion does here.
Yeah, I mean, this is so much processing too. Like in this game, he actually lost a few reps where he wasn't identifying the stunt or the twist, and he was sorely responsible for the QB pressure, but he learned into this game, into the second half, like this is what they're doing to us, and he can process it. He processed it quickly on this play. Little just hand placement on those two shoulders of 47 there, and then quickly passes him off to his left tackle. And yeah, he's kind of stunned there at the point of attack by that defensive end, but he anchors it well, and that's that foot placement there to make sure he can stay within his shoulder frame and then really use his lower body strength to anchor down.
Anthony, one last addition here. What are your thoughts on Zion in these clips here? What do you like from him?
This last one was my favorite, and Kendall hit it right at the end. He is kind of, I think, stunned initially by this two-man game, and you can tell like his head is wrenched back. He's almost in a reactionary state, but much like he did this week, he recovers. He wins this rep. I love how he just has that base after he passes off here and just anchors down. He's set. And if you look at where the pocket is for everyone else and then where Zion is, Zion looks like he's 20 yards downfield with his man while everyone else is getting driven back. And what's really nice to see, and I really want to hit on this point because from what Kendall made, because it's so important. When you're winning and you're not refined or you're not polished in your technique, but you're still winning, that's a huge thing because coaches can teach you technique. They can polish your game. You can add refinement. I think the Rousseau comp from Kendall is really interesting because everything we saw, I think a lot from Greg Rousseau in college and then even this year was him winning just off of raw traits and abilities. He doesn't have that polish or that pass rush plan or the headiness and the IQ yet, but he was still finding ways to win. So then if you can add that polish and that refinement, much like you can for Zion, again, I think he's a really intriguing prospect because of that. He's winning despite the flaws that he has, and his flaws are coachable and correctable. Yep. And if you're able to do that combined with what he already possesses, that's something, really strong you can have in your arsenal if you're an offense.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. I like Zion, man. Someone said in the chat, he's probably not going to make it to 25. That's probably true. He's got the tools. He's already got the body. He just needs that offensive line coaching. And once they figure those, minor tweaks out with his hands and stuff like that, and get him in the weight room to kind of trim him out even more, like, dude, he's going to be a scary, scary offensive lineman. So with that said, let's shift gears a little bit. We're going to go to cornerbacks. Now, it's a position we always love breaking down, Anthony. So I want you to start off with giving us a little background, a brief outlook on what the Bills have right now and what we should be looking for as far as cornerbacks in the draft.
So it's so tough with this position, right? Because I think there seems to be this clear divide between what we think the Bills need at corner versus what the Bills think they need at corner.
Hands down.
And what we've seen so far is this mold of like, no, we got Tre'Davious White, and so whatever we put at CB2 will be okay. And I also want to preface this by saying, like, I don't mean to be disrespectful to Levi Wallace or even Kevin Johnson, who came before him. And EJ Gaines is a legend, though. A man forced a fumble with one hamstring, so that's fantastic. But we've seen the Bills just be okay with what they have at corner too. And Levi Wallace he's been really that guy. I know he's platooned at different points, but he seems to always beat his guys out for that spot, and he gets a lot of reps. And he's a guy that offers you a high floor. But I think the ceiling is capped with Levi Wallace, given his physical limitations that he has. There aren't coverages you can regularly run with him. And then if something happens to Tre'Davious White, God forbid, like it did in this past season, all of those deficiencies and limitations are then amplified because now Levi Wallace is your corner one, and you're fitting him in with Dane Jackson, who's in a similar mold to Levi Wallace, although I do think they are different players. But at the end of the day, it seems like the Bills need a more scheme versatile corner who has more traits, who has more athleticism, who has a bit more speed so that they can run different games on the back end. But the Bills seem confident in just being able to put, and again, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but put anyone out there at corner two, knowing what they have in the rest of the secondary. And you pulled up his, market value right now.
You said capped out. I mean, he might be like, no one's paying that.
No,
like obviously, and spot right, they're usually pretty good about ballpark figures. I think Greg Thompson is probably a little better, but even with that number, I'm not touching him at that number.
No, I'm going nowhere near Levi Wallace at 9.6. And on Disguised Coverage this week, we were talking about this in our offseason moves episode. And Kendall was in the comments and posted a really great question of, if it wasn't at this, because we all agreed, I think hands down, if he's getting this at an average annual value, everybody's out. But Kendall posited the idea of, if his average annual value is 5.5, do you bring him back at that? And this is where it all comes, to a head, because for me, I would like Levi Wallace to come back. I think his high floor presents a nice safety net for this Bills defense. But we've seen in back-to-back years, and it's not just about the Kansas City Chiefs. It's about what's coming up in the future, right? Where the Cincinnati Bengals are. Look at the weaponry they have. Look at the Los Angeles Chargers and the weaponry they have and all these other teams. You're not going to be able to go blow for blow with these teams unless you upgrade that corner 2 spot. So at 9.6, I'm definitely out. At 5.5, I think I might also be out as well, because I just think they need to upgrade that spot. Levi's a good corner, but we need to see changes in this corner grouping. And, I saw Daniel's comment from earlier. If, Dane Jackson will be our CB2 if Levi goes. I like Dane, but I think you're still rocking in that same boat in terms of a guy who's tapped out and capped out with his physical limitations, which thus limits what you can do on the back end and then defensively as a whole. Yeah,
no doubt. So what are your thoughts on that, Kendall?
I mean, yeah, I posed the question in your Disguised Coverage conversation about offseason moves about, 5.5 million. Like, would you give that to him? Because I think that's about my teetering point with Levi Wallace. I'd love to have him back. I think he's great to have in terms of an insurance policy. If the guy you want in the draft doesn't fall to you, you can run it back with Levi and Dane. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we saw how good this secondary was even when Trey went down. The secondary is still really good. It's really coached up. They know what they're doing on the back end. But yeah, like you said, being scheme versatile, having someone that can enable you to run zone, or run man, someone that doesn't put fear in your coaching staff's mind when, oh, okay, I got to have this guy chasing down Tyreek Hill. And like you said, it's not even about the Chiefs. Like, there are a lot of guys that Levi Wallace just simply can't man up. And that's not a slight on him, because he's a great cornerback. But for 5.5, for 9.6, you don't want someone that limits your defense. So that's really where it comes to a tipping point with me. It's really a financial thing at the end of the day with Levi Wallace, because I think he's a great player, but it's got to be for the right price to bring him back. And if not, yeah, I'm looking in the first 2 rounds for a cornerback.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to with Levi, I think they obviously know him really well, what he's capable of. I do think he's kind of maxed out. And he did a good job this year. Don't get me wrong. He's done a great job the last few years. He's been very dependable. But I think this is the year of all years to say, let it ride. Like, okay, if his value is 5.5, well, what other corners are out there at 5.5? Because that's typically the number that Brandon Beane likes to sign those veteran corners at. Josh Norman, Vontae Davis, they're in and around that range. So what corners are out there that are comparable in that dollar range that we'd offer Levi Wallace, that we can offer, maybe has a different skill set? That's where I'd approach it. But there's part of me is kind of like what Kendall just said. Part of me is like, you know what? They're going to go in, as Bean always does, and say, guess what? We're not going to create more holes without knowing, so we don't have to reach for need in the draft. And I think that's an easy guy to bring back when all things aside, like of what happened at the end of the year. Like, it's an easy guy to bring back, because
and we know they like him. They like how responsible he is, how heady he
loves
is.
Him.
Yes,
Frazier
he does his job. Him. They know what to expect, and that's like a hard thing to get away. Even if it's not this 10 out of 10, they know they're getting a 6.5 every time. So they're like, okay, that's fine. We'll do that.
Right. So with that said, now aside from Levi Wallace, if we're looking, Bills fans are looking in the draft. What type of, buzzwords or keywords would you say that they're looking for at the cornerback position? Not just opposite Trey White, but just overall, fundamentally, schematically, what type of corners are they looking for?
I think from a Bills fan's perspective, and I'm basing this off of all the comments I get in episodes and all the comments I get on Twitter, the number one thing they're looking for is speed. They want a corner who can run vertically, or I don't even think they're thinking from a horizontal, like on drags and overs and stuff. I think they're just thinking of a guy who literally runs a 4.3 or 4.40. Boom, Tom said it right down there, athletic and fast. Bigfoot anthropologist came in and said speed. That's the number one thing they're looking for, right? Somebody.
But we've been saying this for years, though.
Correct, and I think that's what That's what was so hard in scouting this position and looking at this, because I do this to myself every friggin' year. Is I'm like, this corner is awesome. The Bill that he fits what the Bills need. Boom, this is good. And then lo and behold, it's like, nope, Levi Wallace is back. 1 year, $2 million, and we're not taking anybody a corner. And it's like, oh, all right, fair enough.
Right.
And that's the big thing to come in with every offseason, right? And every time you're looking at free agents and drafting, there is a difference between looking at guys that you would like your team to get versus guys that they are going to get. You might love a player, but guess what? He doesn't fit the archetype that they go at for that position, or he doesn't operate in that philosophical window they like to use and operate in. They're not going to take that guy. And I think for Bills fans, the number one thing to bring it all back, they are looking for fast and, boom, or put it in with Tim's comment there, man coverage with speed to take the top away. They are looking for a guy who I think can man up one-on-one, Kendall already mentioned him. They want a guy who can run with Tyreek Hill, which also, just to say that, if that's what your expectation is, you're probably not going to get that guy.
Not finding that guy.
I don't think anybody's going to run with Tyreek Hill, but Bills fans want someone who has more speed, who's not as much of a liability, who doesn't have clear deficiencies in his game like Levi Wallace does, to keep bringing it back. And I think for me too, it's also when you pair it with the whole secondary, like Tre'Davious White is quicker than he is fast. Same thing for Hayden Poyer, and I think same thing for Taron Johnson. This secondary as a whole doesn't have a ton of speed. What they are is technically sound, and they operate very well in the scheme. And you can still win with that. But the problem is when you come up against these teams that have speed or strength or size, you have to be so on point with your technique and so on point with your scheme and your calls and your communication and all of that, that if you're off in just the slightest way, you're going to get beat. Levi Wallace can cover Tyreek Hill.
He was in good position. Don't get me wrong. He was in good position,
yes.
But the ball was perfectly placed and he had half a step.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. The ball was perfectly placed. Or if Levi, in his technique, if he takes a half step wrong to the left or to the right, boom, you're beaten in an instant.
Yeah.
So having a little more speed and athleticism allows you to be a little more off in your technique because you have some physical ability to match. It all comes back to, I said it on this guy's coverage, I'm going to keep saying it because I love it. Nate Tice said it and talking about the Bills offense when he was on with me before the Patriots game, but I'm applying it to the defense here. It's all about your ability to throw rock, paper, and scissors. You can win rock, paper, scissors by just throwing rock. Like, it's possible that you can do that, right? But your odds significantly go up if you can throw rock, paper, and scissors. The Bills defense needs to be able to do that in order to finally get over the hump, and having a more scheme versatile, athletic, and or fast corner allows them to throw all three of those things.
All right, well, first guy up in the film room, Mr. Roger McCreary. So talk to us about the Auburn product, brother.
I'm going to start it out with this. If McCreary was 6'1" and closer to 200 pounds, I think he's corner one in this draft. I think that's fair to say. He is so good on tape, and he does the same things over and over again in a good way. So looking at his 2021, 2 interceptions, 13 pass breakups, a 45.3 reception percentage, a really fun one if you're talking about reception percentage. So against Alabama, everybody knows Alabama. They got crazy dudes on the outside, and this was before Mechie went down. He was targeted 18 times against Alabama. So Jamison Williams, Mechie, even Slay Bolden, all those dudes. 18 targets. He gave up 7 catches. And he was in man coverage one-on-one with the guys that everybody thinks are some of the best receivers, right? Yeah. So his strengths are that man coverage ability. He stays in phase regularly, and it's because of his footwork and his hand technique. He also has really fluid hips. He's got those oily hips, as people like to say. His recovery is good. My favorite strength of his is that last bullet I have there. He makes wide receivers work for every inch. If someone gets a catch on Roger McCreary, it's because they ran a great route and the quarterback made a great throw. He doesn't give up any easy catches. It's rare to find him letting a wide receiver into his blind spot or him getting beat over the top, underneath, anything. He makes everybody work for everything, whether in man, whether in zone. Weaknesses, as I have there, I think it's just his overall size. He is shorter on the arm length perspective. He is short from a overall, stature standpoint. He's not the biggest guy. And then from a Bills perspective, we know how much they like to run zone. I think he can run zone. I think he's more than capable of, but a heavy majority of his tape and snaps come in that man coverage range. So for the perspective of fitting into the Bills scheme and the odds of the Bills taking him, I think that is a weakness, having less experience in zone coverage.
Yeah, and I'll just add, last year I looked up some of the man versus zone splits. He was a man 40%, 47.9% in zone, 6 pass breakups in man. Zone, he had 4 interceptions and 2 pass breakups. Yeah, I'm with you, man. Sticky feet. He is a little short arms. His arm length is a little short. But he's a guy, when I popped on the film, I'm like, there's no way. There is no way this guy is staying in a back pedal as often as he does. And he sure as heck did. Whether he was in press, whether he was in off, like he was staying in the back pedal. He was not worried about his transition and opening up one bit. Sharp change of directions out of those back pedals. Just the perfect boundary, corner type aside from that arm length. But when you have feet, you're always in phase. Like you got to give a little bit when it comes to that arm length. I mean, look at Dante Jackson a few years ago, that type of player. You talked about the sticky feet. Lower half is controlled yet explosive. Like there's no wasted footwork in and out of breaks. And we're going to see a bunch of film of him and just his transitions. It's going to work. You're going to see it's going to be awesome. But I really liked how well he communicated with his teammates. And when you talked about what the Bills look for and how they operate on the back end, it starts with communication, pre-snap and post-snap. And I think this guy was on film communicating left and right. He was always telling the safeties, in the Bills.
Yes.
The Bills scheme, like when you're watching the Bills film, you're looking at Poyer and Hyde, and they're giving these hand signals and telling, what guys should be doing in the coverages. On film, I saw McCreary doing that a bunch, and he would fit the Bills defense so well, not just because, the athleticism, but he leverages vertical routes so well. He's always on the high side of the receiver on those vertical routes, those vertical stems, on those Dino posts where you're breaking out them back to the middle of the field. Like he's always on the high side of that route, which allows him to stay in the hip pocket, whether it's thrown down the field on the 9 ball or down the middle of the field on a post route. Kendall, what else can you add about this talented cornerback?
I mean, I just want to make sure, like, what Ant said about making wide receivers work for every inch doesn't go by the wayside. I think that's, like, the thing that hits home the most about McCreary. I think he is so patient, like you said, Erik, in his back pedal. He is just so patient and confident with his footwork and his ability to get where he needs to be when he needs to be there. He's never wasting a step, and he really has to. The wide receiver has to make a perfect route and attack his leverage perfectly to get him out of position. And even then, he has the ability to recover, which we just saw.
Yeah, and you're going to see a bunch of those clips, and we're going to start with Ant breaking down that first one right there. And Ant, right off the bat, man, like I said, the communication and then the physical assets.
Yeah, so I love that you started talking about the communication because it's right on display in this first one here. You see, McCreary tapping his head and giving that signal so they check to man coverage here on this one. And what's great about this game against Penn State, he's going up against Jahan Dotson, who is a burner, who is a terrific route runner. So this is an NFL caliber wide receiver that he is matching up against. This isn't just anybody. And look how perfectly, I mentioned it earlier in one of his strengths, in phase. He's just right there running with him every step of the way, gets good hand placement, maintains that leverage over the top that you talked about. He's just there at every step. If Dotson gears down and wants to pop this out, McCreary's right there. If he wants to continue and go vertical like he does, McCreary's right there. And then he turns his head in completion. Just a really great play right out of the get-go against a really strong wide receiver. And then here you go again.
I really love this play. Like I could not stop watching this play. Again, it's one of those like Dino type posts where you're going to see the wide receiver snap his stem off a couple of different times like this and trying to get to the middle of the field, and just watch the patience. Like, okay. Look again, stay in that back pedal. Oh, he's not going to break my cushion. Oh, 5 yards. Boom. Now I'm going to open, and just look how he just. I don't know how he stays with this.
Look at that speed turn. Look at that. What's impressive about this one, right? The hip fluidity in the speed turn. And when we say speed turn, that means when you turn, you basically give your back to the wide receiver. So if he would have turned inside with his right shoulder, that's a slow turn. He turns over his left shoulder, his outside shoulder, gives his back to Dotson. That's a speed turn. He executes this speed turn with such fluid hips, which is impressive, but he keeps his over the top leverage while he does it. Like, he doesn't lose a step to a great route runner and a fast wide receiver. Dotson is sweet. Like, and McCreary just erases him. And I think, Erik, you posted this clip on Twitter and also mentioned, like, Dotson loses his feet on this one, but McCreary doesn't.
No, he doesn't. And like, and let me just slow this down a little bit. Okay, so you see the vertical stem, and then you're gonna see the wide receiver trying to make it look like he's gonna break right there. So he's like trying to bait McCreary to open those hips right there. You see him, and now he's like, okay, he didn't open. He's being very patient, as Kendall said.
Look how confident that back pedal is.
And then watch that left foot right here. He's planting, and now he's trying to make McCreary open up this way outside, which, again, he does there. He finally opens. Now he's trying to get back across the face of McCreary. McCreary does a pirouette. Again, think about this full speed, and the guy you're going against, he turns around. He turns his back to that guy and is able to still stay high side, and then to add to it, he peeks at the quarterback. Oh, is the ball coming? No, that guy's tripping over his own feet. And I'm looking at the quarterback like, this is an incredible display of patience, athleticism, and body control from McCreary and off coverage versus a very, very talented wide receiver, Kendall.
Yeah, this play is literally the patience in the back pedal. Like, everything about this play is just trusting your God-given ability to guard a man when you don't know where he's going to go. And he's just so confident in every aspect of this route. I said you have to attack his leverage perfectly to get him to take a false step. And he never does it once in this play. Yes, he flips his hips to the outside before he should have. But like you said, Ant, that speed turn there, the confidence, the fluid hips, he's just perfectly in phase all the time. Staying between your man and the quarterback, make sure you have safety help. He's always in the right position.
No doubt about it, man. So here's another clip. I know you really like this play. Again, hand usage, press type look, and then just, again, dropping his hips when the wide receiver drops his hips and just mirrors him down the sideline, Anthony.
You hit it with that word there, mirror. Like, again, this is against Dotson, a good receiver, a good route runner, guy who can burn and get upfield. And McCreary is lined up like press man right in his face, one-on-one. I like the hand technique right there, right? He gets his hand on him early, tries to reroute him a little bit. Dotson continues and then hits him with this stutter go. And when he stutters, McCreary's like, okay. And then when Dotson goes on the go, McCreary's like, okay.
And this is awesome technique right here where I have it, freeze framed. He's looking right down the midline. Like, that's what corners are supposed to be. That's what you're taught. Look right down the midline, man. It's beautiful.
Right down the midline, like Shakira said, hips don't lie. And that's what McCreary's looking at. And once Dotson, tries to explode and gets vertical, McCreary just horizontally transitions, then gets upfield. And again, look at where McCreary's head is as Dotson is going up vertically. He's still watching that midline. He's keeping his eye on that midline, watching Dotson every step of the way. And this is what I think is more impressive about McCreary's tape is that it's so strong with technique and fundamentals, but it's coming against legitimate NFL talent and NFL prospects. Dotson is going to the NFL. He could easily be a first-round pick. We know what these guys from Alabama can be, so on and so forth. He's just a really, really talented corner and makes a variety of plays in a variety of ways against NFL talent. And when you can already have that type of proven production combined with the traits, right? We say traits over production, but McCreary's got traits plus production against NFL talent. That's a strong thing, man.
Yeah, and we didn't really get to see too much zone stuff, but I mean, stuff like this are translatable. Like, he's up here on the top of the screen. They're in a cover 3 type look. You see those crossers coming. Look at them communicate. Look, pointing it out. This guy's coming across here. That's Dotson, as you said earlier. And look, that's communicating. He's going to be picking up 44 there. Like, that's the type of stuff that translates into the Bills scheme. But he was a fun guy to watch throughout the week. And then obviously, going into the game even a little today, like someone mentioned in the chat room, what is up with him eating a can of baked beans with like eight packets of sugar?
It's gross.
Like, what is that? That's disgusting.
He does it before every game. I hate it, and I think it's gross, but tape over everything.
Okay, so you're not dinging him for that.
Oh no, it's a ding. It's most definitely a ding. But his pluses are that's how dope he is, right? That's a massive ding, but it doesn't even come close everything else because it's outweighed by all of his pluses and all the good stuff that he offers.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair, man. So let's move on to the next corner on the docket. We're talking about Mario Goodrich. Real quick, while you're going over the strengths and weaknesses, I'll let some of the film roll so that the viewers can take a look at it.
So Goodrich was an interesting one because I see him pop up on a lot of people's boards and lists. He gets a lot of good ratings. He gets, I don't want to say excuses, but there's a common narrative amongst people looking at Mario Goodrich saying, he wasn't used properly in Clemson's defense. He was used out of scheme or out of strength for what he has. And, so I watched the tape and I'll be honest, I didn't like a lot of his coverage when it came to the tape. I was afraid of his ability to carry wide receivers vertically, both in zone and man. I saw him getting beat over the top a lot. Erik, you and I had a discussion about how he lets wide receivers into his blind spot and just gets you'll see a receiver stop at 8 yards on a hook and Goodrich is still running downfield to 12 and 15 yards and the guy is just wide open. So I have some coverage concerns with him. That being said, he had a really good week at the Senior Bowl. He looked better in coverage than he did on tape. So good job for him. I don't think it overrules everything, but a better job for him. And where he really excels is, in this clip right here you're showing, he excels coming forward. He excels around the line of scrimmage, almost like an extra box defender. He's good at taking on blockers. He hits with force and physicality. This is a nice one here. He takes on the blocker and almost acts as like a force player here and doesn't
contains it. Yeah,
exactly. And contains and doesn't let that ball carrier be able to bounce that outside. So it allows the help from the interior to come and tackle and rally. Yes. He's almost like two gapping a little bit here. And does a really good job. And that's where his strength is. He can function in coverage. I think his weaknesses are going to be those vertical coverages and those vertical stems. This one's a really nice one, right? So again, what are we talking here? More around the line of scrimmage. So the hook curls, those flat areas. Look how he leverages the space here, right here in zone coverage. Yep. So he puts the quarterback. He's the conflict defender here, but he puts the quarterback in conflict because exactly how you highlighted there, his spacing between both options is really, really strong. And the quarterback doesn't really know where to go. And because he hesitates, the linebacker from the inside gets to the slot receiver. Goodrich is still positioned enough where he can make a play on the outside receiver, and the quarterback has to throw it away for an incompletion. That's a really good rep there in terms of leveraging space in a situation designed to attack Mario Goodrich.
Yeah, he's a guy, when you look at archetypes for the Bills corners, he's a guy that's going to fit the bill. He's a guy that's going to fit the bill when you talk about that mentality that Anthony talked about, coming up, making tackles like that one right there. Like I said, he was almost like the Terminator. Whoever's getting the ball, he's going to do whatever it takes to go make that guy, to go make the tackle on that guy. You see that there. He's not worried about this tackle coming out to clobber him. He works around him and goes and makes the tackle. So I think that's one of his strong suits. We were talking offline about Goodrich and a lot of people hyping him up, especially PFF. And he was just getting torched every time we looked at these clips. He was getting beat down the sideline and not even close. I mean, whether it was the Senior Bowl or even some of the clips from the games that we pulled, we're like, what is the hype with this guy? When we started going back and digging in a little more, it's plays like this that are really going to pop on film for him. Kendall, what are your thoughts on Goodrich from the top, man?
I mean, it's just a lot of the stuff you just mentioned. I've only watched one game. I didn't get to watch this NC State game, but then I also got to see all of his stuff from the Senior Bowl. And it's like, I understand all of the hype in the extent where it's like, yeah, he's heady. He knows where to be. Sometimes he just can't get there with his athleticism, but he understands how to play certain routes in zone and take away the easy option for a quarterback, kind of more cerebral and processing type things than the athleticism kind of thing that we're all trying to get.
So like Levi Wallace.
So exactly what I'm explaining right now is Levi Wallace. And because of that, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to dig deeper into this guy. So I'm glad that I'm seeing some of this stuff in the NC State game, and I'll have to watch it on my own. But yeah, from the one game that I watched and the Senior Bowl game, it's just not checking enough boxes for me in terms of the athleticism stuff. But he's definitely someone I could see them drafting in round 3 if they decide to wait and they get him in round 3 and coach him up, and he's perfect for our system.
Yeah, I mean, talk about perfect for the system. I mean, here's quarters coverage. You see this guy number 2 kind of threaten like he's going to go to a corner, then runs to the middle of the field. Watch what Goodrich does. He gets his depth here, doesn't let the guy in the flats kind of bait him in there. So yeah, there's a lot of things on film that make him translate and transfer to the Bills scheme. I just want to, like you guys, I want a little more top end type talent, athleticism. And he's not a guy that I see bringing that. Hey, maybe he could prove us wrong, but he no doubt is on the Bills' radar just based on his archetype and from a lot of his skills. So going forward, let's move on to the next guy on your list, Anthony. Your final corner on the list for tonight.
Yes, Marcus Jones. So he didn't play in the Senior Bowl. He didn't do Senior Bowl week. I was disappointed. He was invited. He was coming through. Such a fun prospect. And I noticed him flashing a lot because I wanted to go through and see all the different guys who were going to the Senior Bowl. And I came across him, and he just flashes immediately, the speed and the athleticism and the quickness. And that also makes sense given, this is a little added bonus. He led the FBS in punt return average and punt return yards. He is electric when he gets the ball in his hands. Touchdowns, pass breakups, interceptions, like he makes plays on the ball. He's got ball skills. What's also really nice, and from a coverage perspective, the versatility. So you'll see him play outside corner. You'll see him play nickel. He'll play on both the left side and the right side. He'll play field corner. He'll play boundary corner. And just to put some perspective in for his snaps. So in his career, he played 2 years at Houston. Before that, he was at Troy. He all those years combined, 1,075 snaps at outside corner, 512 snaps in the slot, and 162 snaps as a box defender. So he's got versatility in that regard. And then with his weaknesses, a lot of it all comes down to the size. He is a bit undersized, 5'8", 185 pounds. He is on the smaller side from an overall stature perspective, arm length, height, everything like that. And then technique. But it's weird to, not to give him a pass or tie it to things. He's not refined when it comes to his coverage techniques and his press technique and how he leverages. But I think part of that is due to being such a good athlete. Like, he gets beat, and then it's just like, okay, cool, I'm faster than this guy. Let me recover and get over the top real quick. Like, he's able to make up for that lack of technique with his athleticism and speed. It's really evident in his last weakness, as I mentioned there, is press at the line of scrimmage. Like, he'll miss with a jam or he'll miss with a hand technique and be completely out of position. And then he gets right back into position within a couple seconds because of how smooth he is and how athletic he is. And this also ties to, guys like Zion Johnson or Gregory Rousseau last year. You draft these guys who have these traits and these abilities, and you refine them with coaching and proper scheme adjustment and all these types of things. So he's somebody who I think is going to make an impact on an NFL team right away because of his return ability. And then if you're able to coach up his raw traits from a cornerback perspective, I think he's somebody who could make an impact at the NFL level.
Yeah, I think he did show that inside out versatility in college. I think in the NFL, he'll be a nickel. I think that's primarily what worries me about him, aside from the size, but it kind of is related, is his inability to disengage versus the run. Like when wide receivers get up into him, like he cannot get off the blocks. But he does, like you said, he defends vertical routes really well. He has really, really good closing or recovery speed. So maybe he gets out of phase early. He's able to close the distance as the ball approaches. I think that was, clearly evident in his film. He's a little late on in-breaking routes, which is kind of weird. He, with his speed, he's just half a click behind processing, and that can make a big difference at the NFL level. But and the other thing is, like, I really like his athleticism overall, but you see it kind of like McCreary on like double moves, or when wide receivers try, getting him on 2 or 3 stems, and he's able to mirror. He's got some of that ability. I just don't think he's obviously up to the same level of Roger McCreary. Kendall, what are your thoughts on Marcus Jones?
I actually watched a lot of Marcus Jones this year organically. When I charted games for SIS, I was charting a ton of AAC games. So I saw a ton of Marcus Jones, and the word that just kept clicking for me is reactive athleticism. Like the dude he's really good in mirror match within his own athleticism, not to the point where, like you said, he could be late on in-breaking routes or late to react to certain movements from the wide receiver, but he has just great reactive athleticism and recovery ability to get himself right back in phase. And then in the same note, that athleticism allows him to play the ball. Like, he has great ball skills for his size. And actually, I really shouldn't even say for his size. He has great ball skills. And it's crazy that he does it with his size. I guess that's how it should be framed.
No, definitely, man. And let's take a look at that, because this game we're going to start off with was against one of these standouts from the Senior Bowl, right?
Oh, that it was. So this is against Mr. Calvin Austin III from Memphis, who everybody's been ranting and raving about for his performance this week at the Senior Bowl, and rightfully so. The burst, the route running. He's much more than a speed guy. He's a good route runner. He's got good ball skills. And here he is one-on-one at the bottom of the screen with the hero in our story here, Marcus Jones. And so you see right there, right? That's part of what I'm talking about. The press at the line of scrimmage. Jones gives that hand, and Austin completely dismisses it, gets inside. Marcus Jones is beat. Austin has speed. He's got good route running. He's open. Jones just, as Kendall said, that reactive athleticism, he just closes down the space so fast and so quick, gets back on top, looks through the receiver to the quarterback, sees where the ball is, and then this is where that athleticism comes in, how he's able to break this ball up. You see so many times, even at the college level, corners get flagged because they turn the receiver as they try to come through them to make a play with their outside arm on the ball. Doesn't happen here. Look at that pose. Awesome pause. He gets around Austin and is able to knock this ball down and break this play up. Doesn't turn him, doesn't draw a flag, just a really nice recovery and pass breakup from an athletic corner. And this one, I think, really highlights who he is as a corner, because he doesn't have that technique down. He doesn't have that polish, but he's able to win with that plus athleticism and reactionary athleticism that Kendall mentioned.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That was really, really nice ball skills on this one. Here's another one, right, Ant?
Yes.
Where he climbs a ladder to the top of the screen. You see him climb the ladder on the throw over the middle, and oh my goodness, great catch here on the back end.
He's at the top of the screen, and when this first happened, I just thought it was an incomplete pass, and then I kept seeing how the Houston sideline was just wiling out at the bottom, and I was like, oh, did he intercept this? So he again is in, press alignment here on the wide receiver, and
look at the size difference.
I was just about to say that. Look at the size difference. Like, he's small at the college level, let alone at the NFL level. He's going to be even smaller, but carries his man upfield, and he's in good position to make a play, right? Because of his ability to be athletic, his technique in this one is good. He's in good trail technique. He's right there. And what's nice about being in position like that is if the quarterback makes a good throw, you can make a play on the ball. If the quarterback makes a bad throw, like the quarterback does here, you can do something with that. So the quarterback throws it too far behind his man, and look at Jones, see it, get up, and then one hand, look at that catch. Look at that catch. One hands it, sticks his paw out there, one hands it, brings it in, body control to catch it and not let it hit the ground. Just a really strong play. Again, someone who's got good ball skills. There's even talks of him being used on the offensive side in the NFL because he's got 10 career touchdowns, 9 of them coming from the special teams variety. He's good with the ball. He's athletic. This one, again, is nice because he's in that good technique. QB makes a good throw, he can make a play on it. QB makes a bad throw, he can make you pay. That was a really nice play. And again, I thought it was incomplete when it first happened, and he came down with it, and I was like, okay. And they let it happen.
Yeah, some of your final thoughts on this prospect, Kendall.
I mean, it's just crazy because, like I was saying, his ball skills are so unique to him and who he is at his stature. And this play just exemplifies it perfectly. Like this, you line up and you see Marcus Jones against your guy who's probably, 5-6 inches taller than him. Yeah. I'm sure the quarterback went into that play thinking, okay, if I'm in trouble here, I'm throwing up the 50-50 ball and targeting Marcus Jones. And Marcus Jones makes him pay because Marcus Jones was the best athlete on the field for almost every game that Houston played. And that's honestly probably why he's getting those looks as an offensive weapon. This dude is dangerous with or without the ball. He's just a very unique prospect at his size.
Yeah, no, he's again, he's got that athleticism. There's no doubt about it. Will he, fit into what the Bills want right now? I made a joke to
Oh,
Anthony
that was good. I
offline.
was gonna
I
say
go, are you just scouting nickels? You're trying to get rid of Taryn?
it.
Like,
Trying to replace
because
Taron
I
Johnson.
think he would be a phenomenal nickel with his footwork in the short area. Then you talk about, defending those quick slants and those quick passes from those against those shifty wide receivers. Like, stick a guy like Marcus Jones on the slot and let him work. I think that he would definitely fit inside there. But yeah, obviously his athleticism and his ball skills are really, really nice. But we're going to shift to the defensive side as well. And we're going to go inside. All right. We're going to go with the defensive tackle. And it's the position that I had been looking at the entire week. And I mean, this is the position that I think the Bills need to spend a high draft pick on, but I don't want them to, because I think it's almost become a need. And I think that's why the free agency is going to really be telling for this position, because basically who the Bills have coming back next year right now is Ed Oliver. All right. And I mean, he had a great year. It was a great breakout year for him. He was 8th overall in run stop percentage, according to Pro Football Focus, at 11.2%. He was money against that. And think about that. He's a guy that's doubled a bunch. And for him to be top 10 in that at his stature.
He had the 5th highest double team rate.
Right. So for him to be in that, even in that ballpark, is pretty incredible for his stature. I think towards the end of the year, they kind of scaled back some of his run snaps. They started using other guys, like they bring Starr as a nose tackle and Harrison Phillips as a 3-tech to kind of save him for the pass rushing element, because as we all know, like outside of him, there weren't really too many options besides Obata, shifting him inside a little bit at the defensive tackle. So really when it comes to, D tackle, Ed Oliver is the really only starting level talent. And I say that because Star Lotulelei, obviously, he went through some things last year, and Harrison Phillips took over, and Harrison Phillips had a phenomenal year. He overtook that job. He finally got healthy, especially towards the end of the year. I mean, he was 2-gapping, was just stacking guys, peeking in and out of gaps, played really, really well against the run. But I mean, he's a guy, again, for the defensive line, they're scheme-wise, archetype-wise, they're not really a type of team that likes getting those 330-pound defensive tackles. They like speed, right, guys? They like those undersized, attacking-type defensive tackles. Well, yeah, one-gapping penetrators. But Phillips has that DNA. Unfortunately, he's not under contract. According to Spot Rack, he's in that like $4 to $5 million AAV range, which is, a healthy contract for a defensive tackle. And I do think they should bring him back. And I think they should pair him with Ed Oliver. But aside from those two guys, I mean, I'm hearing that Starr might walk away. I'm hearing that he may not come back. And if that's the case, then the Bills are in really big trouble.
Yeah.
Again, outside of Harrison Phillips as well. So with that said, I'll throw it to you, Kendall. Like, I mean, this becomes a massive need for the Bills, right?
I mean, yeah, I wanted them to do something at this position group last year. There was no guarantee what Starr was going to do this past year. And yeah, like you said, he had some moments, but he definitely took a step back after getting COVID. And yeah, with, the uncertainty moving forward, you have to put some youth into that position other than Oliver. It is Oliver or bust right now. And there's obviously still the injury history and past with Harrison Phillips. So you don't want to hang your hat on that too much, even as great as he played. But yeah, it's an area we need help in. There's times that this run defense seemed like it needed someone that was just going to occupy 2 blocks more consistently than Oliver did, because Oliver kind of tried to shed them and then make a play. Whereas we need someone to just occupy them, just eat up that space and let our linebackers work, because we got some rangy linebackers. But yeah, we got to find some way to get some youth into that position and some youth that's going to contribute quickly.
Right. And so, Anthony, I'll throw this to you. Generally, the Bills like those undersized D tackles. I'm looking at the archetypes from Bean's time in Carolina and in Buffalo, and the average weight is 306 pounds.
That's crazy.
And this is updated. We updated it today because I had Joe Shine's draft classes and Dan Morgan when he was here, his draft classes included in this archetypes. But now that they're gone, I've just went Bean totally, and we have enough draft classes and free agency periods where they are able to bring in guys that have 300 or more snaps. So 306 pounds. And that's honestly where Harrison Phillips is, right around that 304, 307 range. And so, something that we've been talking about the last few weeks in this offseason, generally they have those lighter guys. They like those one gappers. But as you've seen me post film on Twitter and ask the question, has it become a time where, with how often the Bills are in those 6-man boxes, as Kendall said, with those rangy linebackers, is it time to add some beef in front of these linebackers? Is it time to add maybe a guy that can not just occupy 2 offensive linemen, but also 2 gap and play 2 gaps and cancel gaps when teams do decide to run? Because down the stretch, down the last month, I saw Tremaine Edmonds having a 2 gap as a linebacker way too often. And Leslie Frazier has to come to terms with, you're not putting your linebacker in the best position to defend these runs in these 6-man boxes that you love to play with your safeties back, obviously. So now he's got to ask himself, is it time to tweak the scheme? Is it time to tweak the personnel?
I think this one goes hand in hand with the cornerback conversation, because there's certain limitations to the defense as a whole, given how they have philosophically operated with their defensive line, specifically in the interior. And, we are advocating for a guy who's a little heavier than 306 pounds and a guy who can function as a 2-gapping defensive tackle and not just function as a 1-gap penetrating defensive tackle. And I think it's needed. And the question is going to be if the Bills think they need that and what they do. And, Erik, you and I have talked about it in the film room. We've talked about it offline. I think it's needed. It helps the defense as a whole, but it especially helps Tremaine Edmonds. We've shown it in the film room, like how easy it is for offensive linemen to climb to the second level and get hands on Tremaine Edmonds, even Matt Milano, but Edmonds especially, and just forces him into conflict and into these lose-lose positions. When you've got a linebacker 2-gapping, they're already at a disadvantage, let alone Tremaine Edmonds, who his strength is not taking on blockers. His strength is not stacking and shedding and 2-gapping and doing those types of things. He's fast, he's rangy, he's athletic. You want him making plays sideline to sideline or coming forward unimpeded and not with hindrances and obstacles in his way in the forms of offensive linemen, let alone allowing linemen free and easy access to him. But that's the big question, if they recognize that scheme change that they need and that philosophical change. And I think it's absolutely needed. I know you do as well. It's something we've seen with this team for too long. What they give up in the run, and Bigfoot says it there, we need a big, ugly. Yeah, what they give up in the run. And it all comes tied to, I love how you said it, it comes tied to that scheme. The Bills are a nickel defense. I know a lot of people have said, I've seen some comments on Twitter saying like, oh, the Bills need a 3rd linebacker so they can run more 3 linebacker sets. They're not doing that. They'll do it if they face a team like New England who's going to go crazy heavy personnel and they need to match. The Bills' base defense is nickel defense. Taron Johnson is not a nickel corner. He's a starting corner. It's the fact that he's a nickel, it is what it is. Yeah. He is a starter on this defense. The Bills' starting personnel is 2 linebackers. It's been that way for the last several years. They're usually around 70% or more in nickel personnel. And then, Erik, like you mentioned, they combine that with light boxes. So most of the time you've got 4-down linemen, Edmonds and Milano. And then if they go with 7-man boxes, you know who the 7th man is? Taron Johnson. So you're light there. So what could you use? A nice big 2-gapping mountain of a man, maybe like a Jordan Davis, as we saw some of the comments come through. I think they need that in this defense in order to combat some of the weaknesses and vulnerabilities they've shown in the last several years, this past year especially, but we've seen it the last several. They've been vulnerable in the spine of that defense, and that can't continue if they want to get over the hump.
Yeah, so the 3 guys I focused on, well, the 2 mainly were Devonte Wyatt from Georgia, and Phidarian Mathis from Alabama, and then, of course, Travis Jones as the week went on. I was like, okay, I can't ignore the guy that's been standing out the most. So I'm going to start with Wyatt. And, again, keep in mind, these are I'm mainly looking for guys that are either, straight-up nose tackles or guys that have the ability to play nose tackle based on the Bills' archetype. Because, again, Harrison Phillips played in an odd front at Stanford at 305, 307 pounds. And that's the nose tackle in the Bills scheme. And even Star Lotulelei going into this year, he said he was in the 307, 310 range, something like that, like really light for a nose tackle. So I'm going to start with Wyatt here, a guy that flashed. And I mean, when you turn on his film, when you watch him at the Senior Bowl, he flashed and he has some of that versatility. Obviously, Jordan Davis, if he's on the field, he's going to be your nose tackle. So Wyatt showed some ability to bump inside, but more times than not, he was the 3-tech nose defensive tackle. And that's because he has that quickness and lateral acceleration, especially on stunts or run blitzes, whether in the pass or the run game. His ability to jump gaps is it's one of the first thing that pops on tape. I really like his peripheral awareness when the ball's handed off the running back. Like, he may get, thrown out of his gap because he attacked upfield. He does a spin move and he knows exactly right where the ball is going to be entering into the line of scrimmage. He does that really well. But there are times when the balls run away from him that he can progressively lose ground on some of those stretch runs. And he needs to add more to his pass rush arsenal because, yes, he has the speed and quickness to win with that first move, but I want to see something where he transitions to power, like use some speed to power. I'd like to see more of that from Wyatt. Kendall, I'll throw this to you. What were some things that flashed on film for Wyatt prior to the Senior Bowl or even down at the practices?
I only got to watch him at the practices, but the main thing that I saw was just movement skills, man. Movement skills at his size. It's rare. It's rare to find someone that can occupy gaps, but also have the athleticism to shed and make a play off of it. He has the ability, like you said, to be in that shade technique or in that 3 technique, and he can do it in the run or the pass. Like, he is truly versatile with his stature, his weight, his overall frame, and then his body of work as a player. He really has a lot of different ways that he can be used. And it's just really intriguing, in my opinion. I'm excited to get into more of his game tape because really all I've seen from him is his Senior Bowl stuff.
Anthony, what about you, man? What are your thoughts on Wyatt?
I feel kind of bad for him because Jordan Davis had such a crazy year that I think he overshadowed how good Wyatt is, and Wyatt's legit. I think you nailed his strengths and weaknesses, spot on, and just in focusing on the Senior Bowl piece, the week that he had. I thought he did a good job taking on double teams. I thought he did a good job at the point of attack and holding his own. I think, as you labeled there in his strength, like his quickness and his lateral acceleration, his ability to penetrate and get into the backfield and make plays, combined with his awareness, makes him such a stud. But you want to see what does he look like in those double team situations, those point of attacks. And I thought he did well this week to pair it with, what he's done all year on game tape.
Yeah, you talk about that quickness off the snap. Look at him shoot this gap right here as they bring the linebacker behind him, run away from him, and he just shoots that gap. Again, that lateral acceleration. Look at him get through the hole, use his balance, and then just make the tackle on the running back. I mean, that shows up on his film left and right. Here's some clips from the Senior Bowl. Again, look at the move on Mays, the right guard there. I mean, that is just that's nimble, footwork right there against a pretty talented offensive lineman. I mean, watch that lineman punch out, and he just totally misses him because of the quickness from Devonte Wyatt.
Look at that sidestep. Like, I feel bad for Mays because he's like just getting into his pass set, and Wyatt's already by him and upfield, and he just rips underneath and disengages. That's a nice, when you combine that rep there in the Senior Bowl and the rep before against Bama, that type of lateral quickness is rare, and it's something that will work in this Bills defense when paired with the rest of the defensive line. And it's a reason I think Wyatt, if he's there, is very much in play for the Bills at 25. And again, it's easy to see why. Look at the explosion from him and the nice little club on the outside, rip underneath. That's athleticism, that's technique, that's burst, everything that you would love to see in a defensive tackle, but it's rare to find in a complete package with his size.
Yeah, and Kendall here, again, I talked about, the run stunts, the run blitzes, and here's a little pass stunt. You see him again, short edge right there, get a hit on the quarterback. That's what you have to do. Again, maybe he doesn't get the sack here, but he gets a hit on the quarterback, and that affects the quarterback.
Finishes.
Yeah, this is just really impressive, like just arm strength here, because you can see he's really tied up by this guard here, and he just tosses him aside. Like, he just gets those arms off of him, keeps his chest plate clean, and then gets right into those movement skills that I was talking about. Like the way that this guy can move at 315 is truly impressive. It's really impressive to see him kind of like shake and bake there on Cade Mays in that last one and keep his chest plate clean in that way. And also the other traditional way where it's just using your arms to keep your body clean. So just solid body of work.
Yeah, and the next guy is I kind of coined him as like the Harrison Phillips clone because he's just such a good technician. Is he going to wow you with his pass rush skills? No, they're pretty much non-existent. But he's a guy in Phidarian Mathis that has the size, the length, and the technique to throw in there at nose tackle in the Bill scheme. Now, not your traditional nose tackle, as I said earlier, 313 pounds, but he plays with great leverage. I call him a leverage monster. He's a good technician, just like Harrison Phillips. He's played a bunch of big games, but he can, more importantly, play on day one. I think he's more of a probably like a day 3 guy. And I think that's exactly where the Bills probably would invest in a nose tackle type player. But as I said, his weaknesses, he's not going to threaten the inside or outside edge. He's mainly a power rusher. Sometimes he'll get a nice deep rip in there and try to shorten that edge and use his power, which he did a lot in college. And you can do that at the collegiate level, but the NFL level, we saw down in Mobile and a lot of those one-on-ones, he wasn't that effective as a pass rusher. And I think he's just, sort of an average athlete. Kendall, what were your thoughts on Mathis down at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, the main thing is really how much can he add as a pass rusher, because like you said, that leverage that he plays with and leg drive, the way that he generates push in the pocket or in the run game, it is really it shows experience. Like it just shows like he's very comfortable in how he plays and how he wins, and he can do it with ease. But can he show that he can win in ways that aren't comfortable to him? Like you said, being an average athlete, I think that is his concern. Looking at it from a general manager's perspective, do I want to take this guy before day 3 if he's really not going to impact our team on all 3 downs?
And what do you say about Mathis?
Yeah, I think he has the potential. He had some solid flashes at the Senior Bowl. Maybe he creeps into the back end of day 2, but I like where you have him at as a day 3 kind of guy. He struggled with double teams in the Senior Bowl game today. He got moved out a lot, but then he had some snaps where he rebounded and was able to split the double teams, able to anchor down. I mean, it was because of, as you have that strength there, the leverage monster, his ability to be the low man. And, as the saying goes, low man wins. His ability to anchor down and get underneath and win with leverage was decently consistent. And I think he rebounded nice after having some bad reps. I'd see one and I'm like, oof, bad rep. And then the next play, he would blow it up and make a standout play. So because of that inconsistency, I think where you have him slotted is pretty fair.
Yeah, and you see a leverage play here. Again, look at the hands. They're very consistent. And he just, again, takes the leverage, not just with his hands, but with his body. He's able to turn that center. That's the type of play we see, week in and week out from him. And this is textbook right here. He's 48 right here on the right side of the screen. He sees the combination block coming. What does he do? Textbook, drop the knee right there. You drop your near knee. And so you can anchor down versus that. And then as soon as this guy goes ahead to the second level, scoops the next level, guess what? Pop right up and go make the tackle. Like that is textbook combination block destruction right there. Like that's what you can get from him day one. And again, he's playing the 2-eye in the Bills over front. A lot of times what they do is they won't shade their nose tackle here. They'll play a 2-eye to help defend this gap right here. So they don't have the linebacker with a huge gap over here on this side of the ball. They'll kick him out a little bit. So it's a little tighter window for the running back and the offensive line. So this is just textbook play right here. As I said, a Harrison Phillips type clone play from him on that one. And then here you see him again against Georgia, dropping that knee again. He thinks that combo's coming. That combo doesn't come. But then look at him track the ball. He stays in there and makes a tackle on the running back. Again, just textbook work from him against Georgia. And then here's just another play as far as, his pass rush. This is basically it, guys.
Poor
this
Mays.
Is basically his.
I was just going to say poor Cade Mays.
This is basically him. He's going to push the pocket as a pass rusher. You're not going to see too much more than that from Mathis on that play. But, I mean, there are so many of these plays where he's just stacking and shedding, working down the line of scrimmage. Like you see him peek his helmet into the hole. Okay, well, guess what? The running back's going out wide. I'm going to go make the tackle on him. So he does have a little range down the line of scrimmage, but obviously not to the extent of Wyatt, as I said before. But I have some clips to finish this film room out. We're going to finish with a bang with some beef.
Oh.
Travis Jones, the nose tackle from UConn. So, guys, Anthony, I'll start with you. I mean, what are your thoughts on this big guy and what he would bring to the Bills defense versus a guy like Mathis or a guy like Wyatt that I profiled earlier?
He offered more in the pass rush this week than I had anticipated. So I wanted to lead with that because I think his main ability is that run stopping piece and his physicality inside. His ability to, he's just so, I feel bad for Zion here. This is the one I was talking about earlier where Zion just gets his head wrenched back. These two going at it regularly was like Godzilla versus Kong, just two monsters going at it. And Travis Jones is a very large human, but he converts speed to power when he's rushing. He is athletic for his size. He's nasty on the interior.
He doesn't stop working either, right?
No,
I mean,
he grinds nonstop. He had a couple reps today in the Senior Bowl that were nice. He got upfield and they'd run a screen or the play would get by him on a run and he would then retrace and get upfield. Like he's got a good motor to combine with that size and that violence inside. He offers more of your big ugly inside. He's that type of guy.
Right, Kendall. And I mean, we're talking about how light the defensive tackles for the Bills generally are. I mean, a guy like this will not only help you in the run game, but he can help maybe peripherally, by occupying, two guys, but from mainly affecting the quarterback by pushing the pocket. I mean, centers are typically smaller, lighter type guys. Bringing a guy like this with this type of power could affect the quarterback.
Yeah, and that's honestly a big part of, I think, what the Bills' defensive line has been missing. They really only have that interior pressure coming from Ed Oliver. Here and there, we saw Phillips getting in there, but I think more interior pressure can only help those edge guys eat. And I mean, really, the past month or so, I've been coining Travis Jones as my Jordan Davis consolation prize. If you don't want to spend a first rounder on a guy that may not contribute on all three downs, go get yourself Travis Jones, who has the upside to contribute on all three downs. Because, and like you said, a lot of people that didn't watch a lot of his tape probably went into Senior Bowl week thinking this guy's just going to occupy gaps. He's going to be a fantastic run stuffer. You see his first step explosion and the way he gets pushed at the point of attack, and all of that is put to bed.
Look at that arm.
This guy is nuts. This guy's nuts, man. See, and like I said at the top, some of these drills, they're not really, realistic. But I mean, this one is just what? I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you. But this is my turf, man. I'm coming.
Here's one I wanted to say though, just specifically this clip. He did this in the game today. He did this exact type of long arm. I don't know if it was to the center or guard, but he just completely turned his man by getting that leverage and extending that long arm.
Anthony.
He did that.
Don't jump the gun. I got you, bro. I got you. Bro. Stand by, dude.
I'm excited, man. He looks so good. It's just.
Are you talking about this play right here?
When you play it, see, I got him circled.
Walked him right back, into the lap, and let's. He gets a QB sack right through the offensive lineman.
That's the one.
I got you, bro. Of course, man.
Man.
He did. It translated to the game. And this is just, that power.
Look at him bend. Look at him bend that lineman.
You can't teach that. You either have it or you don't. And it's obvious that Jones has it. And he made a lot of money this week down in Mobile. There's no doubt about it, man. And we see it. I mean, you're going to see most of the clips on Twitter and social media are plays like that because he was just controlling the offensive line. And I mean, even during the practice, during the week, we talked about him in the matchups versus Zion Johnson. He lost that first rep initially. And then this one, he comes back with a different move, just uses an arm over on him, throws him off balance, gets to the quarterback. So we saw him transition to a bunch of different things. And normally, these all-star games and these drills aren't totally realistic. But for a guy like him, a nose tackle, it really was beneficial for us to see him in those one-on-one ones and see what he had in the arsenal, what type of jump he had. So it was nice to see him show out this week and seeing him in a Bills uniform. As Kendall said, I like that. He could be a really good consolation prize for a team like the Bills. Again, if the Bills want to change, you see him right here. if the Bills want to change your scheme just a little bit,
Mm.
a guy like that can blow up, as you see here, the middle of the line of scrimmage right there, and make a tackle on the running back. Like, you know what? Don't have your linebackers two gapping. Don't have Edmonds two gapping. Have your defensive tackles two gapping. Have them occupying two guys. The Bills haven't had that, and we've seen a lot of runs being broken off against them the last couple of years. And you know, a lot of the onus falls on the staff, not just the players. It's the coaches. It's on the coaches to put their players in the best position to succeed. And I saw a lot of the times at the end of the year where I'm like, there's no way they have Edmonds two gap in here. And they did. And they, you know, it happened against those teams like the Chiefs that like to air it out. And the Bills want to defend the deep passes and not let Tyreek Hill get out. And so they have these light boxes and they don't have their, you know, normally their safeties are in run fits. And normally Taron Johnson's in a run fit. Well, if he gets pulled out of the box and pulled out of the fringe of the box, like they don't have that next guy, that seventh defender. And they need a big guy up front to cancel gaps, to gap, to help these linebackers roam, because that's what they're getting paid to do, whether it's the pass or the run. So it was a lengthy film session, but it was a week in the making. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. Obviously, we didn't cover everyone, but hey, it's a long off season and it's cover one. We're gonna cover the draft and we're gonna do it in depth. We're obviously almost 2 hours long here, and we have a bunch of people hanging out with still. We appreciate it. So let's wrap it up. Let's let everyone know where they can find you, what content you got coming out. Kendall, we'll start with you, brother.
Well, you can follow me at my Twitter handle below at Mersky Kendall. And as of now, I'm a floater, man. You're going to find me all around Cover One. I'm just going to be hopping into whatever I'm offered to do on Cover One, whatever I got time for, I'm going to do. I love talking draft. I love scouting these guys. So yeah, you're probably going to see me mostly on the air raid hour. That's what I'll definitely lead with. You'll probably see me mostly there and spot places otherwheres.
Yeah, and definitely you're going to be joining us in the film room a lot more too. But yeah, he's going to be bouncing around a little bit and getting acclimated to how we do things at Cover One. Obviously, someone that knows and is the workhorse of Cover One, Anthony Prohaska. So what do you got going on this week? What are your plans for content?
You can find me here on the Film Room every week. You can find me on Twitter at @pro__ant. You can find me as the host of Disguise Coverage live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And you'll also find me doing some stuff with Mr. Greg Tomset and the Cover One team as a whole. We have some salary cap special stuff coming up over the next couple of weeks. So you'll find me in there as well. And then I'm always doing appearances anywhere and everywhere. I communicate that via Twitter and all that stuff. And you'll find me doing a lot of draft stuff. I might post at weird hours. I do a lot of weird hours stuff, but that's just me. But you'll see a lot of draft content. And yeah, excited for the off season, which isn't really an off season. I feel like this off season is more busy than the regular season with all like the free agent and college content. So we got a lot coming at you.
Yeah, I mean, as the guys know, and they can attest to it, I gave them a lot of work this past week. That's why we couldn't go on Tuesday, our normal recording. It takes a lot to produce all of this and, you know, have it all come together among three people. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know in the comment section if you did. And more importantly, let us know what you guys want us to study. Obviously, we are the film junkies here at Cover One. What do you guys want us to study? What prospects do you want us to watch? What positions? What scheme stuff, which we are going to get to some scheme because the Bills obviously made some changes on the offensive side of the ball, you know, bringing on Ken Dorsey, Joe Brady. There's a ton of different things we can do with that. So make sure to leave us some comments, some suggestions, and let us know what you guys want us to cover, because again, this takes a lot of work. So, but we're doing it for you and we couldn't do this without you. So make sure to leave us all the comments on YouTube and it helps us. It helps, you know, our content get in front of the eyes of other people that may not follow us, and helps everyone at Cover One. So we appreciate everyone tuning in for that 2-hour film session. On behalf of Cover One, I'm Erik Turner. That's Kendall and Anthony. We'll see you guys next week.